Neil wants to know how we can know if a seller of a business is actually serious or not. I'm David C. Barnett, and you're tuned in to Small Business and Deal Making, the broadcast, podcast, YouTube channel where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses while controlling risk. So, if you're looking to take control of your future through buying a business one day, or if you already own a business and you're looking to grow or exit, you've come to the right place. I talk about interesting things, I talk to interesting people, and I answer your questions every week right here. So, be sure to hit like, be sure to hit subscribe, and let's get to it. So a couple of weeks ago, I put out an email asking for people to submit questions for the summertime, and Neil was good enough to send in this question. Let me read it for you. He says, how do you know when the seller of a business is actually serious about selling and not just fishing to try and get a sense of what their business might be worth? Thanks, Neil. It's a great question. And you know what? Back in my business broker days, I used to actually explain to buyers how they could be certain that the businesses I had for sale were from serious, motivated sellers. And so I'm going to take you through this process, and so you can have an understanding of the things that you might want to look for. So first of all, though, I want to relay a little bit of a story because it's very apropos to what's going on here. As you know, I have been talking about my need for getting a new vehicle lately. One of the things that I did is I picked up the phone, I called a local car dealer here, and I actually spoke to a salesperson over the phone. And what was interesting is the very first question the salesperson asked me after the opening pleasantries was, have you been on the website and played with the build and price tool to get an idea of what that car sells for? It's a very interesting question, isn't it? Because what the salesperson was trying to determine is whether I had gone through some investigation and research into figuring out which vehicle I wanted, looking at the different features, consume all the information that the manufacturer had put online, and actually played with the pricing. Because if I had done that and then I was calling the dealer, that would certainly be an indication for me as a buyer that I was a serious buyer and that I was moving along sort of a series of goalposts towards making an actual purchase decision. So let's take that buyer journey and flip it around to think about what might go through the mind of a potential business seller, okay? So there's two ways to sell a business. You can go to a business broker or you can try to do a deal on your own privately, right? And so the very first, let's talk about brokers first. Because when I was a business broker, I used to explain to buyers that my sellers were motivated and serious about selling their businesses. And how would I know? Because I charged an engagement fee. So when somebody came in to talk to me about selling their business, I would say, here are the bits of information I need: financial statements, tax returns, lists of equipment, questionnaire completed, all that kind of stuff, and a check, right? And so a lot of the people who would meet with me, I would go through that whole intake process, explain what I needed, and I would never hear from them again, okay? Not serious about selling. Other people would come in, go through the spiel, and then show up the very next day with every little piece of paper I asked for and the check. Motivated seller. They are investing in the process to make their business available for sale. And that is what I want to get through to you, is the investment. So how can we measure whether someone has invested in a process or not? Well, if you contact a business brokerage office and they have a business for sale, one of the things that I always recommend is that you measure up that business broker to figure out what kind of broker you're dealing with, either a qualified one or one of the other ones. And so, you act like a noob, right? So you start talking with the business broker, they're going to want to talk about the business, but you should bring the conversation into more of a general conversation. Say, hey, selling businesses, that's pretty interesting. How did you get into that? Like, get to know the broker. And then you want to ask, how do you, list a business for sale? What's involved from the sellers? What do they have to do? And you want to find out if the sellers of that brokerage are paying an upfront fee in order to get their business prepared and put on the market. You also want to get an idea of what kind of documentation is required from the broker to get the business on the market. And you want to ask the question, who comes up with the asking prices and what is it based on? Because you want to know if the brokerage is recommending a price to the seller or if they're just accepting whatever price the seller happens to want. Okay. And so those types of questions are going to let you know about the relationship between the seller and the broker and how demanding the broker has been of that particular seller to make sure that they are a serious seller and that they're willing to invest in the broker's process to make their business available for sale in an efficient way so that when the right buyer comes along, they'll actually be able to do a deal. Because brokers who don't do this, what ends up happening is they advertise businesses for sale, and then there's delays while documents are gathered, sellers have unrealistic expectations, etc., right? And so oftentimes when I would ask these things of business owners who were asking me about selling, I would then find that they had listed their business with a competing brokerage, and I knew that other brokerage didn't charge an engagement fee. So then I would question, are they really serious or not? Or are they just trying to see what they're going to get? So that's a little bit of an insight into how you can try to measure the seriousness of a business owner when they're using a broker. And I would argue that going out of your way to engage someone like a broker in itself is an indication of a desire and a little bit of an investment in the process. Now, what if there's no broker involved? Well, there can still be a measurable investment in the process on the part of the seller. So I've, had instances where people have put a business for sale ad online themselves. And when you contact them and ask them for information, say, hey, do you have a package of information put together? They don't. They don't even have their tax returns put together in one place. They don't have their financial statements put together. They don't have a list of the equipment in the business. They've literally just put an ad up and they haven't even considered what a buyer may want. That is definitely an indication of zero to no investment on the part of the seller in getting ready and being engaged in this process. If you meet a seller, even if it's a private seller, and they, have all kinds of stuff already put together in a package, they've got an NDA ready for you to sign, then that indicates that they made an investment in the process. Now, just like we asked the business broker about the process of how they get a listing, we also want to engage with the seller and, again, act like a noob. Say, hey, I'm kind of new to buying a business. I've certainly never sold one before. How do you do that? Who do you talk to? And what you want to hear from them is that they have spent time talking with their CPA or their attorney or, some other professionals that are within their advisory sphere, that they've actually maybe found my YouTube channel or they've read a book that I've written. How to Sell My Own Business is a great book that sellers should read. And it's available on Amazon. You should buy it now. And so, you want to hear that they've actually spent some time and effort and even money learning about the process so that they are ready to answer your questions and that they know what is coming. Someone who really honestly just thinks it's like selling a car or selling a house, the difficulty is going to be that even if it's a good business, even if it's priced right, you're still going to be in for a long process as you have to shepherd them through the process and get them to fetch all these different things for you in order for the deal to actually happen. And so again, the less investment that there's been prior to going out and meeting with potential buyers, the more I question whether or not they're serious or if they're just fishing, as you say, Neil, to try to see if there's a demand out there. Anyway, great questions. You definitely want to deal with motivated sellers. You want to ask them why they want to sell their business. And people who are skittish and don't want to answer the question and stuff like that, my initial reaction is that here's a person who believes that they're engaging in an adversarial negotiation process, that their motivation for selling is something to be hidden from you because it'll somehow work against them in negotiating the deal. And that in itself can be a problem. If you are involved in talking with someone who's trying to sell you something like a business, which is highly, highly complex, it's an intangible for the most part because it's mostly goodwill and a system basically for making money, then you're always going to be worried that they're going to be obscuring information, hiding things from you in an effort to get the best price. And if you feel that someone is behaving that way, then there's no question there's got to be a huge seller note. And I made other videos as to why seller notes are critical when you buy a business, just because they protect buyers from everything that is unknown. And with that, thanks, Neil, for the question. If you're thinking about buying a business, then you're going to want to head on over to businessbuyeradvantage.com, where you can learn about how I can help you. In particular, learn about the Business Buyer Advantage online course and about all the other services that I offer to people who are trying to buy a business. And I'll see you next time. So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses? Easy. Head over to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, where you can learn more about me, learn how I work with my clients. You can learn about my books, courses that I prepared for you. You can also find out all about how to subscribe to my email list, the YouTube playlists, etc. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there, all for free, and I'd love for you to be my guest.